buying new equipment,
Right.
increasing shifts, I don't know, whatever else you do, spending money to make money type things.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, use what you already have. Hey Gabriel, do you want to close the window so that that paper stops moving and you don't have to hold it the whole time like that? Hi, welcome to Manufacturing Matters, the podcast where we talk about all matters in manufacturing, and today we're going to talk about production data tracking and analysis. And I have I'm really excited to have this guest with me today. It's Salman Rehan. Hey Salman.
Hey, Michael.
Hey man. So Salman's over from the US. He works for Factbird as a senior account manager, just like doing a stellar job. We have a small core team in the US at the moment. But it represents like a big part of our company, so that's really good work that you're doing.
Thank you.
So yeah, Salman's been in the industry for over 6 years, lots of experience, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about production data tracking and analysis.
Me as well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, man, always. So, and then we can talk about cricket a little bit after Cricket World Cup, maybe.
Absolutely.
But outside of the podcast, probably. Although maybe that would make a good podcast. Let's see. So we'll start off with like, what is production data tracking and analysis? In your words, how would you describe that? Because, yeah, different people, different definitions. But what would you say?
So production data tracking analysis, right? OEE. There's a lot of different words, right, for the same thing. But essentially, if I had to, kind of put it together in a nutshell, it's basically the digitalization of your production data.
Yeah.
Right? Real-time tracking of the performance of your machines, right? Just different types of bringing, kind of compiling and tracking different types of data off your machines.
Yeah, and that's I really like how you put the emphasis on machines there, because that's quite an important thing. Because often when we're introducing Factbird to a company or our competitors or other similar products, the operators in that, they get a bit worried, right? Like, is this big brother in that? But it's the focus is on machines.
That's correct. So production data tracking is one part of Industry 4.0.
Yeah.
Right? So this is a buzzword that you guys have probably heard. Digitalization, right? Digital transformation.
Yeah.
And essentially
Disrupting
what that
the
is,
industry.
disrupting the industry, all types of things people say to sell technology. But, in a nutshell, what that is using technology to make the different aspects of your manufacturing facility more efficient.
Yeah.
Right. So the production data part comes in the operations space. Right.
Yep.
So how can we make our operations more efficient? How can we do more with what we currently have?
That's so good. Yeah. Yeah. So that's really good. That leads us into, you kind of already answered it, but so we know what production data and analysis is, but why is it important? Why is it a big topic for people in manufacturing?
Well, production data is important just for that same reason, right?
Yeah.
It's to really understand what's going on your floor, right? Understand the efficiencies, right? And most importantly, right, it's to stay competitive. So manufacturing in this day and age, it is a tough business.
Yeah.
Right? Just like any business, a lot of these manufacturers go out of business.
Yeah.
Right? So to stay competitive, right, with the supply chain disruptions, with the, raw material shortages, cost of materials, customers always wanting a deal, right? Always looking at different vendors, making them kind of, doing cost negotiations, those types of things.
Yeah.
So, to stay competitive, you need to kind of what we say is pick up money off the floor.
Yeah.
Right, and production data is a big part of that. Right, collecting that data, analyzing it, and making data-driven decisions is that's basically
that's
what it is.
Why it's important. Yeah. So finding the gold that you already have and using that before you start worrying about buying new equipment,
right.
increasing shifts, I don't know, whatever else you do, spending money to make money type things.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so people want to know what's happening on the floor. They want transparency about their production. They want to know what's happening minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, shift to shift, batch to batch, factory to factory.
Yeah.
Like, you need to have that transparency. Then there's all the supply chain issues, the sort of macroeconomic stuff driving that, pandemics, whatnot. It's harder to make things, and there's all these phenomenons like nearshoring and whatever, friendshoring, moving production closer. So it's anyway, it's hard to make stuff these days. So that's why production data tracking and analysis is so important, because you can get more out of what you have, be less sort of reliant on all these potential things that can go wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And because you've been in the industry for a while, like, you haven't just worked at Factbird, you've worked at other companies in the industry, which makes it really, really, it makes you a really good guest, because you've got more of a meta overview of things. I'm quite interested to know, like, sort of how do you think it is today? How do you think things are working? And if you have any thoughts on how things have changed over the last 10 years or so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've been in this industry for a while now, what we call, this Industry 4.0, or supporting manufacturers with digital solutions. Right, so obviously in the OEE space, connected workers, those types of things, and there has definitely been a massive shift in the mentality and the requirements for digital solutions. Right, maybe years ago, a lot of manufacturers were doing things kind of by intuition. Right, back in the day, back before I started my career, there was a reliance on Gemba walks.
Yeah.
Right, getting out there. You had people who had a lot of experience, right? They were kind of relied on to make the big decisions. And it was a lot of intuition, observation, right? A lot of huddles, talking, whiteboards, right? Relying on people with a lot of experience to kind of, make the decisions which drive their improvement actions.
Yeah, so you've also got that other problem of those people are retiring.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing in the connected worker space. There's a brain drain.
Yeah.
Right, and so digitalization again is very important. We want to keep that knowledge in. Right. So if there's somebody who's been at a company for 30, 40 years, this guy or girl is when they exit the organization, there's a huge knowledge gap.
Yeah.
Right.
So you need to manage that knowledge better. Also make it easier for new people to come in. So there's all these sort of standards and structure and processes in place that they can sort of slip into. Right. So there's less for them to sort of have to learn to become productive or good at whatever they're doing.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So So digitization's really taken off because of this need of change and this need of improving productivity. So how do you actually do it? How do you track production data and analyze it?
So, this is a very broad question.
Yeah, we can't say everything.
Yeah, but no, how do you track your production data?
Yeah.
Right, and so in this, in this day, a lot of machines are pretty advanced. They have a lot of, pretty high technology logic controllers, right? So, let's take the example of Factbird, right? Yep. One of the strengths.
That's a good example. I've heard of that company.
Yeah, I have too. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I came to Factbird a few years ago, one of the things that really kind of, blew me away was the creativity and the flexibility that we provide in capturing that data, right? So step one is always we get asked when we, speak to a manufacturer is, how do we capture that data, right? And, to answer your question, there are many different ways or avenues, right? So just if we go by the most kind of plug and play, simple way is using what we have here is our Factbird Duo IoT box.
And I think this is episode 10 of the podcast, and we have not once talked about those boxes behind us, so it's nice that you bring it. And there's a photo of a dog. I can explain that in another episode. His name's Haldor. But yeah, those are our Factbird Duo for the IoT edge devices. Connect them to sensors, right? And then there's the Factbird View, which you can hook up to a camera. A whole bunch of other things. So that's the plug and play option for capturing data.
That's correct. Yeah, you just plug it in, like you said, connect it to sensors, put it on a T-splitter, connect it to existing sensors, go right into the machine control cabinet, look at 24-volt pulses.
Yeah.
Going to a PLC, capture the input/outputs. Right. So there's many different ways to capture data off your machines and off your lines.
Yeah. So the main thing is it's possible. You can use the plug and play route. You can hook into PLCs. You can hook into Kepware, right, or whatever.
That's correct.
You can get the data.
Yeah. So we can go that other route as well and eliminate the need for hardware at all. Just do a direct PLC integration.
Yeah.
Right. Because like I said, the machines nowadays, they have Allen Bradley, Siemens, right, very high tech. Logic controllers that are capturing data points like you can imagine.
Yeah.
Right. But the issue is that these data points, this data is siloed. Yeah. Potentially within a HMI on the machine, or it's not aggregated the way the manufacturers would like.
Yeah.
So another strength of Factbird is, becoming a one-stop shop kind of backbone solution for your operations. Right. So typically when I'll go speak to a manufacturer, it's typical where they'll say, okay, we have, let's say, 100 machines, out of which 30 are, state of the art. They've got everything, PLCs with a lot of good data. 30 have, they don't have PLCs, but they have some sensors capturing some data. And then 30 have absolutely, they're from pre-war or something like that.
Well, yeah.
So what we say is great. Right, so we have different ways, we have the creativity to capture data from all these different types of machines, bring that in a one-stop shop solution, so for that operations leader to actually be able to just, have at a glance look of exactly how their floor is performing, right, rather than going into a separate solution for this one, looking at separate reports for this one. So we kind of consolidate everything, and, you can get as high level as you want, get as granular as you want, so a lot of good things happening.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. It's not just in manufacturing, but in any, like in my role in marketing, and you don't want to have too many tools. Like you kind of want to have your information in maybe 3 different things or point, 2, right? You don't want to have this 15 different systems you got to log into to figure out different things, and they're not talking to each other. You want to log into one thing, and that's where your sort of main dashboard is for your day and week, month, and
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. Super interesting. There's definitely a few more podcasts in there about like how we can, how it works. That would be super interesting. But before we finish, I want to sort of ask you about, do you have any good examples in the US of success with capturing data and analyzing it and increasing productivity?
So many examples, right? A lot come to mind. So typically, when we're speaking to manufacturers, I'll ask the question, if you could have 1 million more units by the end of next week, what would that do for you guys? And the answer is usually that would be Christmas come early.
Yeah.
Right. That would be amazing. We're talking, we'd hit our production quota much earlier.
Yeah.
We'd get bonuses. Shift leaders are happy. Operators, pizza parties.
High fives everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah, because the marketing isn't the problem. The demand's not the problem. Typically, it's like keeping up with production.
That's correct. Yeah. That's correct. And that's a client of ours that you might have heard of, Raymundo's.
Yeah.
Out of Chicago, Illinois. So they come to mind, and they came to us with this similar situation or this similar story, right? Where so they're making snack packs, flan, jellos, those types of things.
Yeah, ready to eat, sort of authentic Mexican desserts, right? Yeah, really good stuff.
Yeah, very good stuff. Yeah. So basically they came to us, and like you said, they're really good. So everybody wants them, right? So they've got customers, grocery stores and food service areas. So they came to us and they said, what can we do about this, right? We have a problem. We're not able to keep up with demand. Salespeople are not happy. They have orders. They can't fulfill them.
Oh, that's a nightmare.
Yeah, that's a nightmare. So their older processes where they've got people writing stuff down on paper, production counts. They're logging their downtimes in Excel, right? They've got supervisors going at the end of the shift, kind of after the fact, logging their downtimes, the reasons, what were the codes. They're having huddles about it, whiteboard.
They're losing data. I remember in the interview with Roberto there, he said that sometimes people would like wipe off the whiteboards, and then that's gone.
Yeah. And they were basically thinking, okay, we have to start overtime. We're going to open up a night shift. We're going to run 24/7.
People will get unhappy about that, and it'll cost more money. Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, we're going to have to just buy more machines and buy more equipment. And we said, okay, great plan, but let's take a step back. Let's see, are you currently producing to your full potential? Right? Is there any money that you're leaving on the floor? Right? So that's where technology such as Factbird comes in. We came in, put in some of our devices, very quick installation. They're using our Factbird View device as well. So they've got cameras on the floor that are time-stamped to their production output flow.
Oh wow, yeah.
So long story short, they were able to get real-time data. They were able to be alerted in real time to issues happening on the floor, and then they had the after the fact post-analysis reporting that they were using to drive their improvement actions.
Yeah.
Right. So before they went from kind of word of mouth, intuition based kind of operational improvement planning to data driven.
Yeah.
Right.
So making better decisions, and they're getting I think their OEE went up 20 points. Well, that's what we have. If you check out the case study on our website.
Yeah.
And that was filmed a while ago, so it's probably even better now.
Yeah, and the last at that time, the CEO told us that they were able to just break all production records.
Yeah.
Right, so they were setting new standards for themselves now.
Yeah.
Right, and their product is it's obviously a good product. There's a lot of demand for it, and they're just we saved them millions of dollars because they were potentially going to be buying new machines and doing all sorts of stuff that is good, but how much money are you leaving on the floor?
Yeah. So there's gold in the data there. If you're only getting 60% out of your machines, you shouldn't buy another machine and only get 60% out of that. You should get more out of your existing equipment.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And that's really good. So that was a super good podcast, Salman. I'm looking forward to. Yeah, it was good.
I hope
looking forward to writing it up. My name's Michael. Today I'm wearing a shirt, and that's how I'm going to end the podcast because I forgot to say that at the beginning. I never introduced myself. Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Good. Thank you.
And that's Gabriel.
That's Gabriel. Good luck editing that, man. That was really good. You're super easy to listen to.
Really?
Yeah, you got a good